Hi, and welcome to today's topic of how do you pay yourself? You have your own company. This is Davy Jones of Innovative Financial, here to help you answer pertinent questions about your finances. And today we're going to focus on you own a company. Either it's a side gig, you're self-employed, you own a company of some sort or another. How on earth do you pay yourself? So we're going to go through some layers of how payroll or distributions work. Part of our conversation will be taxation, part of it's going to be cash flow, part of it is going to be how do you plan to keep your household running? If you are married, how do you keep your spouse understanding how the money is going to work? So, without further ado, let's start at the very top. If you're new in business, chances are what you have is a sole proprietorship. Now, most of the time, depending on the state where you live, we're going to recommend that you create an LLC to protect your assets. An LLC is simply a legal bucket, if you will, an envelope in some ways, doesn't affect how you pay taxes. So if you're the only owner, and whether you have an LLC or not, you have to make a choice. And that choice is, do I want to be taxed on my Schedule C, which is full pass-through taxation, or do I want to set up an S corp, which is a special kind of flow-through corporation? And there's actually a fairly easy rule of thumb. If your company is creating enough income to where you can pay yourself a reasonable salary, and reasonable is what you might go earn out in the market, and still have an extra $10,000 or $15,000 to distribute, then it's worth considering a sub S corporation. So most folks starting out, that's not where they're going to be in the first couple of years. Those first couple of years, you're just going to have all of that income flowing through on your Schedule C. What this means for you is that every dollar of income is going to be taxed directly to you on your Schedule C based on how the tax code calculates it. Remember, there's going to be the 20% discount for the flow through business income. I'm struggling today. Sorry about that. I'm a little bit off. Fun of life. In any case, so the advantage of using a Schedule C is you only have to pay self-employment tax on the amount paid out as payroll. Anything that's a distribution is only taxed as income. So let's talk about that self-employment tax rate. It's not nothing, as they say. It's 15.3%. So at one point in your life, you probably were getting wages under a W-2. You saw your FICA and Medicare, and that was 7.65%. Well, your employer, probably you weren't paying attention, matched that. That adds up to 15.3. Now that you're self-employed or you own a company, you have to cover both sides of that. So it's a big number. While you're looking at this situation, if you're trying to plan for your future cash flows, it's important to look at your personal tax situation. Again, if all that money is flowing through to your tax return, you need to know how much to save and send in for estimated tax payments. So, to the best of your ability, and I know nobody has a perfect crystal ball, but do a good estimate and say, all right, here's about how much I expect to bill, here's my estimated expenses, this is what's going to be my income from my company. As that flows through my tax return, either I'm single or I'm married, what will that look like? How much will that income trigger in taxes? Divvy that up by 4 over the course of the year and use that as your estimated tax payments. The key there is to contribute as much as you need to so that at the end of the year, the amount you owe is less than $1,000. If it's greater than $1,000, you might be subject to an underpayment penalty, and penalties stink. Paying taxes isn't exactly all that fun, but it's much better to not have extra taxes, right? So this is the part where we want to make sure that your family runs well. So looking at the amount that your company is going to produce for the year, less the taxes, that's how much is available for you to take out. Okay? The good news is you're successful. You don't even need all that much money. So you're going to take out some amount less. When do you take it out? You can take it out on whatever schedule works for you and your household. Is it bi-weekly to feel like a paycheck? Is it monthly because that's how the bills run through your house? Is it quarterly because you are the king and queen of budgeting? Whatever works for you, you can take it out at that rate. But you might be able to leave some in your company to invest in new equipment, new projects, marketing, whatever it might be. Now remember, the income, all that income is going to be taxed on your tax return, whether you leave it in the company or not. So whether or not you take it out is not going to affect your taxes. That's an easy place for people to get confused about. That if I take the money from the company, is that a taxable event? Not when you're sole proprietor taxed on your Schedule C. Let's shift gears. If you make that subchapter S selection, money will come to you out of your company in two different ways. One, as an employee, it's going to look just like you used to have a W-2 job. You get the W-2, taxes are withheld. Now remember, you're going to pay the FICA and the Medicare 7.65 on your pay stub, but the company, your company, is going to pay the other half at the company level. The slight tax advantage there is if you're making quite a bit more than what would be considered a reasonable wage, that extra can be distributed not through the payroll, but as an owner's distribution, and it's taxed only as income, not as self-employment income, subject to that 15.3. So that's what we have there. And one thing I want to mention a second time is when you are sole proprietor and you have the money just coming in on your Schedule C, creating a schedule of disbursements so that you can basically pay yourself like a normal payroll is going to help you run your personal life better. You're going to know what bills you can pay, what's going to be coming in. If you're married, it's really going to make it easier on your spouse. And if you're early in your business, keep it on the low side. I mean, enough to keep the house going. But that way, if you have downtimes in the company, you've saved enough money to hedge against the bumps in the road. It's 2020 right now. There are bumps in the road, let me tell you. So that's if you own the company all by yourself. What if you have a co-owner of some sort? First, if the co-owner is your spouse, you have a unique choice in that you can remain taxed on Schedule C's, just splitting up the interest for each of you on the Schedule C. You don't automatically have to consider a partnership or a subchapter S. So that's a unique piece in the tax law. And it works just like I talked about as the single owner flowing through to the Schedule C, that all income will be taxed as it flows through to your tax return, and you're subject to the self-employment tax. Moving money from a company to your personal pocket is not a taxable event, but do try and do a cash flow projection so that you can plan appropriately for taxes and try and systematize those disbursements so that your household runs in a way that doesn't make you crazy. Now, if your business partner is not a spouse, then there's a couple of other choices that come into play. One is to choose the subchapter S arrangement, which I mentioned before already, where the owners can be paid as employees for a portion of their work, and then based on their ownership interests, the income can be distributed out to them and not subject to self-employment tax. So that can work rather nicely, especially as the company perhaps is growing and is a little more mature. Now, that medium place might be that you want to have a partnership. Now, partnerships, in my experience, are some of the most complex organizations around, and they're complex because they have the most flexibility. You can have ownership based on how much money you put in. You can create ownership shares based on sweat equity. If you're going to do a partnership, absolutely bring some specialists in to help you do it so that you can do it correctly. But that will require a separate tax return, just like the sub S on an 1120. Note that 1120S is it's the 1060 for the partnership. Sorry, too many numbers. So you can do the same planning when you have multiple owners. So really key today, I know there's a lot of information on this topic, but really key is to try and understand what your cash flow is going to look like for the year and understand the structure that you have. Putting those two together sets you on the path to understanding how you're going to be taxed, what your cash flow is going to look like, and what influence you have over your taxes and your cash flow going forward. Thanks for joining me today. As always, we love having you join us. If you've got questions, be sure to reach out and ask us. We're here to help. If there's a question we haven't answered yet for you, let us know. We'd love to cover it. Have a great day.